The desert moon of Raxora 3 cast long, silver shadows across the jagged dunes. In the pre-dawn stillness, the smugglers' convoy moved silently, guided by greed and the promise of a rare prize. Their quarry, a young alien woman from the Xylarian species, known throughout the Outer Rim for their bioluminescent patterns and telepathic abilities. Her name was Serena, and she was worth more than any common ransom. They didn't know the cost of taking her. The raid had been swift. Guards distracted by the early morning sandstorm barely had time to react as the convoy's hovercrafts descended, extracting Serena from the Xylarian enclave and disappearing into the dunes. By the time the first rays of the twin suns breached the horizon, she was gone. They didn't notice the subtle tremor in the air, the vibration of a presence they could not see yet could feel. Miles away, in the shadows of an abandoned fort atop a cliff, a figure watched. A human. Not just any human, but one whose reputation spanned countless systems. Captain Rylan Cade, a man who had survived ambushes by pirate fleets, negotiated with rogue AI warlords, and extracted hostages from the most dangerous worlds in known space. To the smugglers, he was a myth. A ghost. A legend. Rylan had received a tip hours earlier. Serena had been targeted. By the time the news reached him, she had already been taken, but that was acceptable. He moved with precision, descending the cliff in a gravesuit designed for stealth and speed. By sunrise, he would be at the fence separating the smuggler's compound from the open desert. Middle, infiltration. The compound was heavily guarded, a mesh of drones, automated turrets, and human mercenaries who trusted only in firepower and numbers. But Rylan had never relied solely on brute force. He had tactics, patience, and an intimate knowledge of human unpredictability. Clinging to the shadows, he advanced along the perimeter fence. The hum of the energy barriers vibrated under his boots. He assessed the patrol patterns, memorized the drone circuits, and calculated the timing of his window. Inside the compound, Serena struggled. Though the Xylarians were resilient, their telepathic abilities made them particularly sensitive to stress. She could feel the mercenaries' minds, crude and rigid, pulsing with fear, excitement, and greed. She tried to resist sending a mental plea for help. It would be dangerous if the wrong person detected it, but the thought of the human legend gave her hope. She didn't know him personally, but whispers of Rylan Cade's heroics had reached even the outermost colonies. Outside, Rylan moved like a shadow across the dunes. Every step was calculated. He disabled sensors, avoided motion detectors, and eliminated patrols silently. By the time the twin suns began to rise, their light streaking across the sand, he had reached the perimeter wall. The fence wasn't a problem. Not for him. With a small device, he deactivated the energy field just long enough to slip through, leaving no trace of intrusion. The smugglers were focused entirely on their prize, unaware of the storm approaching from within. Middle, the confrontation. Inside, the mercenaries were celebrating. They had secured Serena in a holding chamber and were preparing to transport her to a waiting ship. One of them, a large man with a cybernetic arm, laughed as he examined the bioluminescent patterns that shifted across Serena's skin. "You don't know what you've got," he said, grinning. "This one's worth more than all the spice shipments combined." Serena glared at him. "You don't understand. You're meddling in things beyond your comprehension." The man sneered. "Cute. Don't worry, you'll fetch a high price, and then it's off to someone else's problem." He didn't notice the subtle change in the shadows, the faint outline of a figure crouching atop the ventilation duct. Rylan Cade had arrived. With calculated precision, he disabled the security camera monitoring the holding chamber, then released the air vent covers. Using a retractable grappling hook, he descended silently. Within moments, he was inside the room. The mercenary turned, shocked. "Who?" Rylan struck swiftly, using a combination of martial arts and zero-gravity maneuvers. Within seconds, the mercenary was unconscious, slumped against the wall. Serena watched in awe. "You came for me," she said softly. "I told you I would," Rylan replied. "No one touches you. Not today. Not ever." Another group of mercenaries stormed the chamber, alerted by the sounds of the scuffle. Rylan moved with almost supernatural speed, using the environment to his advantage, flipping over tables, throwing knives with perfect precision, and neutralizing them without a single lethal strike. He knew Serena's abilities could help him, but he wanted to ensure no harm came to her. Finally, the last guard stood, weapon raised. Rylan's gaze met his. "Drop it," he said calmly. The mercenary hesitated. In that moment, Serena's telepathy flared, subtle, precise, and terrifying. She reached into his mind, feeding him a fragment of the fear she had stored, just enough to make him drop his weapon. Rylan caught the gun as it fell and turned it toward the door. "We move," he said. Middle, escape through the desert. Outside, the twin suns had fully risen. The compound's alarms blared as mercenaries began to regroup. Rylan and Serena ran across the sand dunes, moving fast, but cautiously. Serena's bioluminescent patterns glowed more brightly as she exerted herself, creating a mesmerizing light show across the desert. She wasn't just beautiful, her patterns acted as a kind of camouflage against the harsh sunlight and sand glare. Together, they were almost invisible to the sensors still scanning for them. "Where are we going?" Serena asked, panting lightly. "To my ship," Rylan replied. "And then somewhere safe." The horizon shimmered with heat haze, and in the distance, a shadow moved, a patrol drone scanning the desert for the escapees. Rylan activated a small EMP device, disabling it before it could alert the others. Serena laughed softly, a sound that was both relieved and amazed. "You're incredible." Rylan shook his head. "I'm just someone who keeps promises. I don't let people get taken." They reached the edge of the canyon where Rylan had hidden his ship, an old but reliable freighter camouflaged against the rock formations. He activated the engines, and the ship hummed to life. As they lifted off, the compound shrank behind them. The smugglers were shouting, but it was too late. Rylan had already planned their route, a maze through the desert canyons that would throw off any pursuers. Ending. A new beginning. Hours later, after navigating the treacherous desert terrain and escaping the radar grids of the outer rim, Rylan and Serena landed on a secluded moon. It was a small, verdant world, rich in resources and far from the greed-driven eyes of smugglers and pirates. Serena stepped out, breathing freely. "I can't believe you did all that, for me." Rylan smiled faintly. "Because someone had to. You didn't belong to them. You never will." Serena's patterns shifted, flowing like liquid light across her skin. "How can I ever repay you?" "Stay alive," Rylan said simply. "And trust me to keep my word. That's all the repayment I need." They walked to the edge of the moon's cliff, watching two suns set behind distant mountains. For Serena, it was a taste of freedom she had never known. For Rylan, it was another mission completed, but unlike any before, it had a personal weight. Somewhere in the galaxy, the smugglers would regroup, plotting revenge. But Rylan didn't care. He had saved someone who mattered, and the legend of the human who stood against impossible odds would grow ever larger. Serena turned to him, eyes gleaming. "You're not just a legend, you're my shield." Rylan chuckled. "And you, Serena, are the reason it matters." As the twin moons of the planet rose, casting silver light over the valley below, a new chapter began, one of trust, survival, and a bond forged under fire and danger. The galaxy was vast, but together, they could face whatever came next.